It's Stevivor's Friendly Fire Show, episode 229 for maybe the end of Feb, maybe the start of March. I don't know what's going on anymore. 2023, that's the year. I'm one of your co-hosts, Steve Wright. Joining me is co-host Ben Salter. Hello, Ben. As people know, this is recorded in advance, so please, let's not talk about any news that may have happened that we don't know about.
There's no need because all the news happened at the start of the month. Very busy start of February. So we've now had time to actually play games. It's also been a busy month to actually play games. There's the game that we've been teasing for. We may as well just get straight into it. That we've been teasing for weeks because it came out a few weeks ago. We do probably need to say off the top, there is some, how would you phrase it? There's
J.K. Rowling is a transphobic, horrible person who has horrible thoughts, words, and actions. We don't condone anything she says. We think that trans people are people. We think that intersex and binary people should have the same equal rights as everyone else. And don't even come at me, bro, because if you have a different opinion, it's 2023 and, like, get on board, people, because, ugh. So you can absolutely hate Rowling and you can have a different opinion about the game that we're about to talk about, Hogwarts Legacy. Anything you want to add?
I think you've nailed it. You can separate the game if you choose to not do that and you think you bundle them up. That's also a very valid opinion. I would just say let people make their own choice and don't be hatefully pushing your own opinion on people and abusing them on their choice. Let people make their own mind up on this.
And in, like, the very Star Trek nature of what I think we should be holding ourselves to be as humans, like, fighting hate with hate is not a great response. So let's try to open up a dialogue if people have disagreements and get them to understand why we're all people and we should, offer kindness, courtesy, and respect to one another. But anyway, let's talk about Alohomora and stuff. Is that a spell?
Yeah. I don't actually know. With that out of the way, let's talk Hogwarts Legacy because it's a very good game. It's basically the game we've always wanted to play in the Harry Potter universe. It's kind of like the early 2000s when you wanted to play this big open world game and experience Hogwarts for yourself. It's finally here, and that's what it is. And I think that's why, like, it's breaking all crazy records on Steam for concurrent players at the moment. On Twitch, I think it's got the record for a single player game. There's a lot of interest in this. And I think it's because of that. It's taking a lot of people back to their childhood in that I would like to experience what it's like to be at Hogwarts myself. And you can kind of play it how you want. You can be the type of, within reason, like it's obviously a licensed game. It's not a full on crazy customizable, do whatever you want, choose your own adventure. Like the main narrative is pretty well set. But you can make some decisions and you can kind of decide to be a lighter Harry Potter style wizard or maybe more of a Slytherin style. Use the unforgivable curses if you like. They are in the game. You don't learn those from your professor. You learn them in another way. So I think the lore side of things is pretty strong. How much have you played?
I am still probably in like the second or third day, I guess, of Hogwarts. I just learned, because people know what spells are, I've just learned like Incendio not too long ago, if that helps as a kind of focal point.
Have you got your broom yet?
No. And I've been making it a habit to not follow the beaten path when I have an option to go and do all the side quests and explore and do this and that and the other. So, I'm having a really good time of it. It's, it couldn't be a day without me mentioning Star Trek, and I've already done it on this bloody podcast. But like, Star Trek Online is not a great game, but it's like a chance for me to get to like role play as if I was in Star Trek, like as a kid, even as a grown adult. Like that's I would be so excited if I could magically like just be transported up to the Enterprise and like live in Star Trek. I definitely would. And this is in the same vein, but like a much nicer, like far more polished, sandbox to play in. So you get to go and be sorted. You get to go and pick your own wand. You get to go and learn spells and go into dueling class. And apparently you get to get on a broom. Like it's like the little Harry Potter fantasy that people want to have. So I understand why the appeal of this game is what it is.
Exactly. And there's no Potter to be seen. That's kind of you're your own wizard. You get to pick your own name. I picked Grillis Threepwood, which is, I didn't realize you're going to have to pick a name. So I went with my gamertag plus the star's surname from Monkey Island. I thought that sounded Harry Potter-ish. What did you go with?
I just went with Steve Wright. So now when I walk around everywhere, because it does it all to all the characters, like it's first name, last name. It's like I don't like it. It makes me uncomfortable for some reason. It's just like Steve Wright.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's why I didn't use my name. And they do it quite well. Like, so you can pick your look, and that kind of goes way further. It goes very Destiny, and you'll keep getting like robes and hats and scarves and gloves and things, and they affect your stats. So they bump up your offense and defense. So you kind of end up often in dodgy looking attire because it buffs you when you're in combat. So, and then you kind of get attached, and you can, I think there are ways you can kind of level up things that you're more committed to. I haven't really bothered with that yet. I pretty much just put on something when I get it that's higher stats, and yeah, you can do all that. But your performance, you've got just the male or female voice actor's performance, and they're very extremely British.
Yes.
To the point that my partner said, "I didn't realize Daniel Radcliffe is in this game," and I said, "No, it's just a British man who sounds kind of Radcliffe-esque,
like the main character. That guy's
yeah.
Sebastian Croft, who's in Heartstopper. And if you saw him, you'd be like, oh, that guy. He was in Doom Patrol, I think, for an episode. He's quite good.
Similar accent.
But yeah, like just quickly back to the Destiny thing. 90% of the gear that you get is just god-awful ugly. You can, once you equip it, go back to like the main gear screen, highlight the thing that you want to change and hit X on Xbox. I'm making a guide for this as soon as we finish talking. And then you can just pick like whatever you want it to actually look like. So you can transmog your gear so you don't look like the best goggles I have are like, they're almost like the joke ones with like the springs that come out. Like you look like a clown. So you can have stat benefits, but you can make your character look like a not insane clown posse fan or something.
There are some insane outfits. The performances are pretty good. That's where I was going with that. It's they somehow get around the fact that they never mention your name, but it doesn't feel like an awkward way because you your own name. Everything else is quite scripted and dialogued, and there's heaps of cutscenes. So the side quests are a little bit generic. Is quite often a younger student being like, "Oh, can you get this thing for me, please? Nice fifth year." But the main quests actually pretty good, and certainly beyond where you've gotten up to. Like it gets a lot more involved, and there's of course those baddies who are after a teenager who's the worst, and they need to get him. Wouldn't be Harry Potter without that. And so, yeah, I think they've done a pretty good job performance-wise. It's probably the best. I think it's better than the Fantastic Beasts movies. Like I'm way more involved in this story than any of those. Yeah. And I think setting it like 100 years before the events of the story up until now kind of gives it enough separation that there's no knowing exactly what's coming. There's definitely some nods to some famous families, but like it's kind of its own story, and they can pretty much do whatever they like because there's enough time in between that it could be something which doesn't have to influence what's to come.
That all the stuff that you're just uncovering that's been forgotten in the Wizarding world will somehow be forgotten again by the time that Harry rocks up. Fair enough.
Like kind of like a lot of things happen,
If you had the invisibility cloak just like somehow like happen to get in your possession, especially now at the end of this whole arc, knowing what that really is, not just like a cool little invisibility thing. Yeah, that wouldn't work. So there's like a random spell that no one else seems to ever know how to use in the future of this from where we are. But whatever. Like it's a video game conceit. So
someone clearly, I don't want to give away any spoilers, so all I'll say is someone hasn't looked through the achievement list in full, clearly.
Haven't.
And so, but yeah, I mean, that's a good example of something which they did a really good job of explaining. Like that's quite early on. You need to kind of sneak around the restricted section, which is very Philosopher's Stone. There's some things which are kind of inspired by events that have happened in the movie and a different take on it 100 years earlier. Boys will be boys, I suppose, or girls will be girls if you're the female character, or whatever you choose to be.
Wizarding world and wizards people will be Wizarding world people.
Basically, yes, those magical people like to break the rules. Yes. That's where I'm trying to get. And so they kind of explain, like, obviously, if you just had the invisibility cloak and you could just run right through, it's not great gameplay there. So they teach you a spell which makes you invisible-ish, but they kind of say, oh, it's not that good. Like they'll see you if you're close. And later on, you can get a potion which makes you a bit more invisible than that, but still, so there's like very RPG. But yeah, I quite like how careful they've been with the lore to kind of explain, oh, a cloak would be much better, but obviously they're too expensive. Like there's just little throwaway lines like that, which are, I think, more careful than some of the later books were, where they often just kind of threw away all these world-building things and they moved on to, now everyone can just teleport everywhere. But like that's, like there's, yeah, it's quite careful, and it's obviously made by people who are passionate about it and not wanting to break anything that's come before it.
Yeah, which is good. And I guess that it's weird in a way because you can see the passion in creating this. And we've had chats with, like friend of the show, Tano, who's like, this is great, but like, I don't think I can recommend it to my partner.
No.
Because there are so many Harry Potter things crammed into it. The design maybe is a bit too complex, unless you're like a
very
proper
complex
gamer.
I would agree. So maybe that's why it's so popular on Twitch as well. Like it's something people just want to like feel like they're involved, but they can't actually play it themselves. And the further you get in, the more complex it gets. So initially, like spell casting, for example, is you have like generic attack just on right bumper, then you hold that down and you can assign any spell to the 4 face buttons. And then as you unlock them, you can then use D-pad to change to like 4 other set of spells. So sometimes the spell you want is like hold right bumper, then like left on D-pad, and then like A or X or something. Like you need to kind of remember where you've assigned them. As you get more and more spells, you don't have to do that. They're optional unlocks. I think it's really useful because otherwise you're constantly having to like change, especially when you get something which, like you probably have your few favorites which work for combat, but then there are several that you need to get through puzzles and get through the world building type of stuff. And it's kind of annoying to have to constantly change to those. Some of them I do because I don't want to waste a slot on something that I use like once every 3 hours. But yeah, like that's quite complicated, especially in combat, which it's way better than I expected it to be, but it's tough. Like you need to kind of know what you're doing.
Yeah, well, that's the problem that I have. Is I thought I only had, maybe I have more. I don't know. I wasn't aware that this was the case.
Got to unlock them.
Okay, well, I have 4 spots, and I kind of have like a red one down the bottom. I've tried to keep the color in this, like, so I know that yellow is. I always have Lumos because that seems to be helpful all the time at the top of, or that's Y, I guess, on an Xbox controller, and then like Incendio on the bottom, Leviosa on the right, and Accio on the left. And I try to keep whatever colors those are the same color. But then like that means you don't need Incendio, so you got to switch to Expelliarmus or whatever on the bottom one. So I'm always in like the right menu, like looking for the spell I want and then hitting A to assign it. That's a pain in the butt.
That is a bit clunky. So I suppose you actually end up with up to 12 spells assigned at once because you use D-pad to swap between your like preset face buttons. So, but I do the same thing. But to not get confused, I always have spells are basically grouped into a color, and those colors align to like enemy shields, which you need to break them. So I always have like you get Incendio pretty early on, and then you get like a different kind of similar attack that's more powerful later on, or Expelliarmus is also a red spell. So they all work for that red enemy. Yeah. And I always have that as the bottom one. So when I cycle through my different sets, red's at the bottom, purple's left, yellow's right. Otherwise I get too confused.
This is confusing already, like if I'm being honest, but like, okay, you sort of get the hang of it. Combat makes it a bit more difficult, I think, because I'm having trouble hitting. So, like, as an example, Expelliarmus is red, Incendio is red. You might fight an enemy, if you're fighting a witch or wizard that has like a red bubble around them. So you have to hit them with a red spell, like one of those. Or they have yellow and you have hit Leviosa, or they have a purple and you have to hit them with a purple spell.
Yeah.
I'm trying to hit those people, and either I'm like moving my camera to try to hit them, and it's deciding I want to hit someone off screen, or I've clicked down on the right stick to target them, but I've also like tried to spin the camera so it's reassigned my target lock. So I'm hitting like a purple wizard with like the red spell that I meant for the person in red that I've kind of like not like I'm not having a good time with combat lock,
trying to get
aiming basically. But maybe I'm just bad because it doesn't sound like you've had this problem.
No, I mean, so you like hold down left trigger to lock onto an enemy, and then you bounce between them with right stick, which is, I mean, it's exactly the same as like how Metroid is, which I'm also playing at the moment. It's very Zelda-y, so maybe that's why I'm kind of used to that style. And it's kind of like, the difference here compared to like a Spider-Man or a Batman, and it's very heavily inspired by that. It's kind of people wait their turn style of combat flow, and you need to kind of like attack, counter, dodge, block. You kind of get into that rhythm. It's a bit slower because you're spellcasting and you're a ranged character only. Like they're both obviously close in brawlers, basically. And then there's kind of 2 types of enemies. There's other wizards who are attacking you with spells, and then there's like melee characters who are just trying to bash you. And a lot of those are creatures and things that you run across. And that's where I'm surprised at how well it does work. Like you're kind of a mid-range fighter, basically, in that you need to kind of stay pretty close and you need to use your dodge, but you don't really have a close range attack. Some of the spells are meant for close range. That's how they've kind of got around with it.
Yeah, Incendio doesn't have a very far
No,
area of
but it's
effect.
but it's very powerful if you do hit it like real close, especially against an enemy that you've like hit back recently and they don't have much health left. So yeah, it does take time to get into it. I think it was classic game, even all the other RPG elements around it. It would be tough to play this for a little bit and then leave it and then come back to it. Like you need to be in the zone and used to it because it is quite a unique take on combat. And it is the more you play, the more complex it gets, as I just mentioned. But that's kind of the point we're trying to make is that it's not easy, it's not that accessible for such a mainstream series. But that said, by the time you do unlock all those extra spells and have them ready to go, you've played so much that you're a bit more used to it and you're kind of more in the flow. So it does guide you along. And I think it's kind of a slow tutorial the first like 4 or 5 hours until you get your broom at least.
A little too slow, to be honest, in some points. I can't remember. There must be like a story difficulty setting that you can pick. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think so. I think that I can't remember either.
It sort of gets around that, but yeah, like it is a bit complex. I'm not really using the left trigger, which maybe that I should be using the left trigger to help aim and lock, but like it's like I haven't felt the need to, because if you hit right trigger, like you'll hit the thing that you're meant to be hitting. The problem is if there's like 3 or 4 enemies and you have one like dead center in screen and no one else is around, you would assume that is you're going for that one, and then you lock onto it, and then if you're like looking around to see what's happening around you, because you're getting like in Arkham Asylum style like spider sense triggers of like, oh, you need your shield or you need to dodge, like that screws that up. So maybe I just need to get the left trigger.
Yeah, it's going. It's probably actually more Zelda in that sense. It's like whoever you're targeting with your lock-in at the moment is the one that you need to be kind of focus on. So yeah, I would work on that. The only tip that comes to mind that I can remember right now is when you do the broom mission with Madam whoever, who's very similar to the character from the books, but 100 years earlier. Like they teach you how to fly, you kind of muck around, but you don't get a broom then. You need to go into Hogsmeade, which is like the main town area, and buy one. And maybe I just missed it because there's so many prompts in this game. It's a little bit Ubisoft-esque in that regard. I didn't actually realize you need to go. I thought they would just give you one. You need to go buy a broom, and then you've got it all the time, and you can zoom around. So yes, remember to do that. Go to whatever it's called, the broom store.
The broom store. That's definitely what it's called. Cool. Like I like it. I think it's if you're a Harry Potter fan, you're going to like it. It is very slow at the start, but like I know my husband's further in than I am. I know you are. Like it's not. I'm not enjoying it, and I'm getting a lot of enjoyment just from going in. Like I figured out what to do with the blank mirrors or whatever, like blank canvases that require something to kind of like activate them without spoiling it if people want to figure that out themselves. Like I did all that kind of stuff on my own. I still don't quite understand how the weird doors work with the locks that have question marks that you gotta, but I've like unlocked one just because both of the locks were right beside each other, so I just played with all the combinations until I got in. Like I like that kind of thing, that sense of exploration on top of like this. Well, it's Hogwarts, this castle that I am familiar with. Like it's a fun little distraction from, as an example, a first week of a new job that was very stressful and made me require like a nice little bit of escapism.
That's exactly what it is. It's a world to lose yourself in. You do need to do more side quests than I originally had hoped, and I find them a bit more monotonous. But that said, some of them are pretty cool. Like the way they get around the fact that you need to unlock all these spells and you're starting as a 5th year, which is unusual, but makes sense. Like no one wants to go play as 11-year-old whoever who's learning about flavored beans for the first time. Like you can have a much more action-packed adventure as a 5th year student, but you haven't been to Hogwarts yet. No one knows who you are. You need to learn all these spells. And so your professors kind of give you basically side quests to go use certain things in certain places. And that's how you unlock more spells. And several of those are kind of lock the main quest. So it's like, you need to go do this thing. The main annoyance for me is sometimes you have to buy stuff and it's actually quite hard to get currency, or at least I never really figured out how to get it in a good way, at least early on when you need it.
Everything I have, because I thought initially, because I didn't realize you could change the appearance of it, and I'm like, I don't want to look ugly. I just sold everything I owned because I didn't want to wear weird googly eyes or like a stupid hat.
Yeah, and you level up so much. Like often the thing you get, which is now your most powerful thing, if you don't want to bother changing the appearance, 2 minutes later you find another thing which is better. And so you're kind of off that. But yes, if you, I need to actually look into that more because I never really bothered. I did it a couple of times by accident and I was like, oh, you can change it, but it really bothered me that much. But yes, I do look like a weird dweeb most of the time I play this game.
Well, I got to take a
Uh,
photo for the guide I'll make, so I'll send you the photo just so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Or you can read the guide, I guess, but that's mean to make you have to read my guide to
yeah,
get the
well,
information that I could
Well, I
just
think a
pass.
lot of people will go searching guides. Like as you say, it's a game which, like exploring the castle and exploring the world. Like so, Hogsmeade's kind of the next biggest town, and there's a bunch of little settlements around. More, you unlock more as you play. It's why you kind of need your broom, and I think, and no spoilers, but you can kind of progress beyond the broom at some point, fly around in another way. And so, if you bought the digital deluxe edition, you already know what that is.
You can
I don't know
fly
if
on
you
a
know.
golden snitch? Wow,
Oh,
that's
that's right.
insane.
Oh no! Like the very first thing this game says is like Quidditch is cancelled. It's like bummer.
Is that it? Oh, I don't want to know. I'm assuming that's just a joke. Hopefully.
Well, it's yeah. We don't no
Don't tell
spoilers
me.
on
Don't
this
tell
show.
me. Don't tell
No
me.
spoilers.
Because it's been mentioned in passing as I'm walking by people like quite a bit. Like
Yeah,
they're really trying to drive it home, which would lead me to believe that it's a fake out. But let's not talk about that anymore.
they've gone very anti Dumbledore with a cranky professor like headmaster, which is good. Like different story, different way around things. But yeah, just exploring the castle, finding all those secrets, many of which you could just ignore, is kind of half the fun because a lot of it is kind of that magical style, and it's quite different to other games. The gameplay powering it is all very action RPG. So if you played anything, Witcher, anything of that vein, you'll probably figure out what it wants you to do. But a lot of it you could ignore. A lot of it's just kind of things you can choose to interact with. And yeah, I think it's quite a smart way to do that. But as we've been pretty much the message through this whole chat is you need to be able to play that type of game. It's not a Chamber of Secrets on PS2. You pick it up, you play through 10 levels. It's pretty straightforward. Like it's quite complex and involved. How you want to play is really up to you. If you want to push through the main quest or you want to spend that time taking your time exploring, unlocking a bunch more stuff, unlocking the googly eyes and realizing you don't need them, doing all your classes, all that stuff. Like I think that's where the fun of it really is. Even just like scooting around in my broom, love it.
Yeah.
Even though the main quest, like the side quest for your broom, is very Superman 64. It's very like go pop some balloons or fly through some rings. And you know what? Still fun because like you can see the world around you. So yeah, that's what it is. Great world to escape into. Maybe one if you have a Harry Potter fan partner who's not a gamer, them to kind of watch you play. Like I think that's still some level of fun in just kind of seeing the world and a different take on Hogwarts if they're not kind of up to playing it themselves.
Yeah. Or at least like you control all the stuff and like when you need me for a fight, I'll be over there kind of thing. Like we'll swap out. Which house did you get sorted into? Or rather, which house did you absolutely intentionally pick the answers to get the house that you wanted to be sorted into?
I let it sort me and I went with it, but you can just change your mind. I went Ravenclaw. I decided I didn't want either of Gryffindor or Slytherin because I feel like the books, more so the movies, are like that. They get all the glory there. So I wanted something different, and I went Ravenclaw. What
I
did
went
you do?
Gryffindor. So does that mean like Natty is not your friend, or is she also?
No,
in
she's
Ravenclaw?
my friend.
Okay, so that was what I was trying to get at without trying to.
Is she a Gryffindor?
She is for me. And there's like
I think she is for me too.
There's a Weasley who's in Gryffindor who's like my bestie.
Yeah,
and there's someone who's not Hermione, but what's her name? Cassida. So so you have you have different characters that you're interacting with, or you don't.
No, I have those ones. I have Sebastian's like my main like come and be bad with me in Slytherin guy.
Slytherin, yeah. Cool.
So I think these main characters, you can interact with them to the degree you want. Often it's like choosing, like when you go to Hogsmeade the first time, it's which of your buddies do you want to go with? And I did pick Natty because I thought she seemed like the best one.
Well, and it's quite clever that she is in the same boat as you. Like she's not a new. Well, I guess are you a new Witcher wizard? I think you are. Really, in the grand scheme of things, she's not, but she's like new to Hogwarts. So like you're kind of you're learning about things in a way that if you were really a fifth-year student who'd been there for 5 years, you'd be like, why are you treating me like this? Like I know that. So it's a good way to pair people and convey concepts and things that otherwise would be out of place.
So that's a good point. If you've been watching other people play and you kind of pick some of the side characters that you'd like to spend more time with, because you kind of align yourself with a few more over others, they don't have to be in your house. Like, so, which is true to the story up until now. Like people are buddies with people outside of their house. It's not a me versus you situation. So that doesn't really, as far as I'm aware, and there's a lot of things which maybe can change things, but I don't think that makes a huge difference which house you pick end of the day.
Yeah.
It can, how some quests play out definitely do. Like there's some points where it's kind of like, oh, the Ravenclaw is finally here type of situation. Like definitely some of the dialogue, some of the people you meet, how quests kind of form, maybe more side quests. does seem to make a difference, but like your character interaction is really up to you.
Yeah, and I like that it's not. I feel like the books, especially, and the movie, like they're the same thing, same source material. Like Slytherin wasn't like the devious, shrewd, like Machiavellian, perhaps, like characteristics of a person. They were just like, oh, they're definitely just like the scum of the earth, evil person. And like there are quests where you could go and kind of like be a little bit more of that mentality, but it's not like. It's like you find something that someone's lost and you can either give it back to them or you can like keep a portion of something for your own benefit or you can like try to get money out of them. You're not like, at least initially, like severing their arm or something because you're just like a horrible person. Like there's more nuance in that and it's, like which is good. I'm enjoying that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, you kind of give yourself your characterization. So there's not a huge degree of like in those dialogue trees of choice. It's normally like 2, maybe 3 options. But pretty much you can be polite or you can be kind of neutral or a bit of a bastard. So it depends on what you want. And like I told my herbology teacher, I'm not interested. It's like a waste of time or something like that. And like I kind of thought that might be like, well, you're out. You can't do this anymore. But she's just like, oh, we'll win you over. Like it doesn't make. I don't think it makes a huge difference. Obviously, anything main quest is pretty kind of locked in.
Yeah.
But it does kind of change your characterization a bit, like and how you're seeing the character you're playing as in their reaction to things is it is up to you.
Yeah. But it's more moment to moment and like it's you making that connected narrative across the decisions more than like you don't pick something and have like a renegade icon pop up with a meter that fills up or anything like that, which is good. Because sometimes, like if that's done well, great. But most times it becomes excessively binary, and by the end you're like murdering babies just because that's how you live now. I was like, okay, Anyway,
none of that, which
good.
is definitely. It's definitely fairly family friendly, but not as much as Harry Potter like that we know. Like obviously there's so much more combat than anything we've had before. You do destroy a bunch of goons, and I'm sure some of the spells are kind of like, oh, they're just incapacitated, or you fight a lot of statues, so it's kind of like they can be destroyed, or like spiders and various mythical creatures. But I mean, you are pretty brutal. Like for a 15-year-old, you're going through just slaying beasts and murdering goons, so you kind of have to put that aside.
I used my super magic power to like just rip a goblin into a million pieces pretty early on.
So that's why it does kind of bring up the unforgettable curses, kind of saying like, well, these are a big deal to use these, like actually killing people and that type of thing. But I kind of feel like I've been doing that with these other spells the whole time. Maybe I've just managed them somewhere or something, but I don't know. If that's going to make me more of a dark character and maybe that's where it's trending, I don't really mind. Like I feel like that's been my go the whole time.
There you go. Maybe there'll be DLC where I can fight you because you're the evil villain now, and I'm the Gryffindor picking all the nice, polite answers like a good boy.
Of course you are.
And I look so good. I'm really happy with my character creation, but that's beside the point. What else do you want to talk about? We're like 30 minutes in, so the answer could be nothing. It's up to you.
That might be pretty much it. We'll just quickly skim over the fact that we seem to be in like a bit of a golden era of licensed games. Like they're back, right? Like so early days of Xbox One and PS4, I feel like the licensed game was dead. It wasn't like THQ kind of had a stranglehold on like the PS2 era when it was every single movie and TV show had a bunch of games for it. I think there were like something like 6 or 7 games for Attack of the Clones. So we were at that level. Then we got to the Marvel movie era and like nothing. And so now what's changed? Like I kind of feel like we've got Spider-Man, we've got Hogwarts Legacy. It's kind of like they've been released from the shackle of the B grade kind of movie tie-in. They're kind of like licensed games now tied to a franchise, but to be its own thing. And I didn't really see it coming back like this in such force.
Yeah, well, and for every Spider-Man, there's a Gotham Knights. So we're in a different period in terms of what's being made, and thankfully a lot of it's good. Some of it's bad. I would love like a Star Trek game because I'm bringing it back to Star Trek. That's not Star Trek Online MMO. That's more like a Hogwarts Legacy. But I guess the problem there is that, and with most licenses, is that you have to pick the right one. Because a Star Trek game where you're running around basically just like shooting everything would be fun and roleplay, and there would be the elements where you're exploring and stuff. But like, is that necessarily what Star Trek is? Like, we just go around and like maim people and shoot them. Like, no, not really.
I mean, that's
So
the same as Hogwarts, right?
yeah,
Like you're a lot more brutal because of the nature of the game. But yeah, I think it's like basing games on these franchises rather than tying them directly to a movie has made a huge difference. So
yeah.
it's worked well for Spider-Man. Batman probably did it first, but then it kind of fell away a little bit.
And Wolverine's coming. Like that'll be like
Wolverine,
he's a ball of violence. It's
yeah.
perfect. So
Like Bethesda's working on Indiana Jones, right? So I mean, that's kind of tied to a new movie coming out, but I think the game's totally its own thing. Avatar was meant to get a game. I have no idea what happened to that, but again, like separate to the movie. I think is it still rumored that IO Interactive is working on a Bond game that's like totally separate to.
No, it's not rumored. It's
announced
thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. And so like that franchise has been dead for like 10 years. There hasn't been a new game. And they were all pretty much tied directly. They tried to do their own separate stories. Like Bloodstone, I think, was one of the more recent ones. And it was decent, but like they just got a bit too we release a game when a movie comes out type of situation. And I think having something like that just go with a developer who will make a great game based on that, doing their own thing. That seems to be the winning formula.
Oh yeah. Don't tie it into a specific event, but tie a developer with a franchise that makes sense. Like maybe before Uncharted, an Indiana Jones game was kind of like, I don't know, it'd be like a platformer, like a Pitfall kind of thing. But now, you know, like with Uncharted, with even Tomb Raider, like that's, you know, you don't need any further proof that an Indiana Jones game in that vein and that style will work very well. Hitman, IO Interactive, they've been making James Bond games for years now, just albeit a different name and a different slight setup, but like you understand how that's going to translate very well. Like just pick the right license, pick the right person to do something with it, and we benefit, which is great. Huzzah.
It's a good time to be playing licensed games, which I never thought I'd be saying.
Well, we're in the golden era, Ben, I guess.
That's right.
I don't know.
That's right. And that's about it for this week. I think we've covered a lot of Hogwarts Legacy. We've had plenty of time for the listeners to actually play it, which is nice. So we haven't spoiled anything, and it's always good to kind of be able to talk about things a little bit after release. So that's what we've been trying to do. I think we've been off track slightly the first few weeks of this year, but we're back on that.
Yeah.
Talking about games that both the two of us have played and that hopefully other people have played as well. So that's our format mostly for the rest of the year. And we'll be back next week. I've no idea what we're talking about next week, but something will be out.
We'll figure it out. In the meantime, go and read Ben's Hogwarts Legacy review on the site if you are on the fence. There's also a big thing about why Rowling isn't someone that you should be holding in high regard. I talked about Star Trek Picard. That's like officially out now this week. I think I'm putting up a post about they do this weird closing credits now. That's kind of like in the Marvel Studios style of like all these glimpses of things as the credits are rolling, and like there's like a 50 million Easter eggs. So that's what I focused on. Without spoiling anything. And that's enough. Stevivor.com, blah, blah, blah. You know the deal. Give us a rating on podcast platforms or something. I don't know. I'm not good at the spruiking. Ben, see you next week.
See you next week.